So hello, pardon me, good afternoon everyone. Without any further delay, as we've talked about, there's quite a few people, the numbers are going up there, so we wanted to give everyone a couple of extra minutes to just kind of get signed in and start listening. So thank you for everyone here who's joined us for today's webinar on building a resilient approach for your job search during the COVID era. My name is Ian Pollington. I'm a senior manager for Page Group International in the Middle East. I've been in this region for 7 years and I've been working in recruitment for 15 years. And during this time, I've worked through the 2009 financial crisis and the 2015 oil crash here in the Middle East, both very challenging times for lots of reasons. But I'm pretty sure that 2020 will be remembered on a very different scale to both of those for lots of different reasons. But I don't want to dwell on the negatives here. At Page Group, we've been putting together a series of webinars aimed at providing valuable information and inspiration to our communities. We've partnered with business leaders and sector experts across topics including employment law changes during COVID time, selling in the new normal, and using agile practices to manage teams remotely. All of these webinars are available on our website. You can access those anytime you want, and there's some others there to have a look at too. But today we're hosting one ourselves. We are, I guess, the business leaders or the sector experts in this scenario. I'm here with some of my colleagues from Michael Page Middle East and South Africa to hear and try and help. So if you're unemployed at the moment, or you're actively seeking a new role for any reason, or in fact you're just passively keeping an eye out for new roles, hopefully we can help you. So look, we asked in advance, we asked everyone who registered for this webinar why you might be looking for a new opportunity, and received a huge range of answers. The key answer, I guess, the number one response was that someone lost their job or been made redundant due to COVID. Obviously very sorry to see that, and it is a bit of a trend, unfortunately. Other responses include people looking for a higher position or better salary. I'm sure that's not just exclusive to COVID, that's probably all the time. People are worried about being laid off. Some people have been searching for a job for a year or more. Some people just need a new challenge or looking for growth and development. Some people have a contract ending soon. Some people have recently moved to the region or are looking to move to the region. I will address that very quickly because I do get asked this quite a lot, and I'm being contacted by people overseas. A lot of the clients that we work with here in the Middle East specifically at the moment are not very receptive to people based overseas. It's not 100% certain for every single scenario, but it is the trend at the moment. Hopefully it will improve soon, but it certainly won't be in the immediate future with most of the clients I've been working with. Another question we asked is, what aspect of your job search are you struggling with most? Some answers included not being noticed for jobs that are a perfect match, not getting responses to my applications, getting a job unrelated to my experience, how the CV can stand out, challenging market conditions, finding jobs that might not be advertised, not hearing back from recruiters. There's lots of reasons which I hope that we will address during this webinar, during our content that we're going to provide you with now, but we will have a Q&A session at the end. So the topics we're going to cover, we have myself, I will talk about the in-demand sectors and skills for the Middle East, and my colleague Valentine Demand will talk about a similar subject for South Africa, for the Africa markets. We then have my colleague Andrew Georgeson, who will talk through some tips around virtual networking. My colleague Denise will talk about how to stand out to recruiters. And then finally, my colleague Charlotte will talk about how you can prepare for a video interview to try and get the best out of that. As I say, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. During the talks, during the content that we'll go through with you now, you're more than welcome to ask questions in the question box, which some people actually have already found. We may not answer them, or we won't answer them during the talk through, but we will do our best to answer every single one that we can at the end. So, as I say, I'm going to talk to you about sector. I'll give you a kind of brief overview of some of the sector trends that we've looked at. So, look, I'm not an economics or an expert on the commercial performance of every business in every sector, We are a recruitment company. I have been very fortunate enough to be able to compile some notes from 28 of my colleagues across the Middle East office who've given me some insight that I can share with you to give you a bit of information about how some of the sectors are reacting and how they're recruiting or how they're focusing their time when it comes to people. So if I look at banking, financial services and insurance, what we've seen within banks is there have been a few roles coming up around tech and digital and data, as well as governance, risk and compliance. Within the banks, predominantly, there hasn't been much talk of layoffs, not widely spread anyway. I did hear yesterday about one large bank in Abu Dhabi who potentially might be letting go of a few people as a result of this. I don't know the facts, but that's the first I've heard of any large-scale layoffs in banks. In financial services, investment officers and associates are still in demand, mostly at the junior end, to perform a lot of the analysis and due diligence that's required. And there is still some need for secretarial talent and some HR professionals. And in insurance, audit and risk advisory is still very prevalent. Companies are looking for people in those spaces, as well as analytics and digitization. In the energy sector, I think it's no secret that oil and gas, or oil specifically, has, from an economics perspective, taken a bit of a hit. So oil companies are a little bit reluctant to recruit right now. However, natural gas consumption seems to have gone up. So what we've seen is a few corporate support roles in those spaces, some health and safety roles coming up, as well as a lot of process improvement and process excellence. Those types of roles, I think, will probably be very much in demand for the near future and even going into the rest of the year. In the transportation industry, third-party logistics companies have been busy. They have a varied client base typically. So where some companies may not be as busy, some of their clients may not be busy, others are. So they have been recruiting some roles. Distribution businesses in general have been very, very busy, particularly in consumer goods and food, of course. I've read about stories of Dubai taxi drivers here in Dubai working with a large shopping supermarket to help deliver their shopping. So there are some real needs in that space. Shipping and logistics businesses based locally to this region, in our experience, have seemed to have been kind of recruiting quite aggressively. The government and public sector, the initial reaction was varied to the COVID situation. So in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar, they remain busy because they have very, very ambitious, future plans which are related to their own economic diversification objectives. So they still did maintain some recruitment. I've seen some austerity measures put in place by Saudi Arabia recently, which may slightly slow down some of the projects and some of the hiring. Dubai put a hold, as far as I know, on all of the recruitment and any major projects that wasn't kind of already in later stages. Abu Dhabi has been on a kind of entity by entity basis, and they've been still recruiting in dribs and drabs. Kuwait has slowed down quite considerably, from my understanding, from a kind of government and public sector. And Bahrain and Oman, I've not really seen much or heard much to give you, I'm afraid, that I can kind of comment on that. So from a sector, again, the technology sector, the technology industry, tech companies, service providers and system integrators with products related to cloud software, enhanced security and virtualization have been busy. They've been busy in terms of answering inquiries, yes. Whether that's resulting in recruitment, I don't know yet, but new payment platform organizations have had quite a lot of activity, since some recruitment going on there, and companies looking to be ready for the new normal. There's been a couple of food delivery tech type companies who've been very, very busy, others not so much. In the telecoms industry, I think the focus there has been trying to capitalize on this current situation. So there's been some recruitment, or we've seen in commercial or strategy professionals, trying to kind of make sense of how they can make the most of this current consumption of data in comparison to what it was before. And in the FMCG industry, predominantly locally based manufacturing and production units have been fully functional to cope with the demand. And like I touched on earlier, distribution, of course, has been very busy off the back of the FMCG industry being busy itself still. Facilities management, there's been lots of new roles, actually. We've seen a big high demand for people across a variety of asset classes, particularly within the sanitisation, trying to implement new sanitisation guidelines and no-touch movement. Cleaning and waste management have been roles that people have been looking, or areas that people have been looking to fill quite a lot. And in the manufacturing, consumer goods, chemical and medical devices, pharmaceutical, medical device businesses, and chemical manufacturing seem to have had a bit of activity when it comes to recruitment recently. So onto the skills. So I'm kind of looking at this from a kind of profession perspective. So firstly, within governance, risk and compliance, financial services, banks, consulting firms and tech businesses have been seeking these types of people. They've been seeking people who have the experience. Typically, Big Four caliber background has been very much in demand. People with strong certified background and professional training in audit and compliance is very, very useful for these guys. Financial crime needs to be monitored and investigated. Companies are struggling, so they do cut corners, or people within companies cut corners, shall I say. So they want to make sure that's managed. Across strategy, investment and M&A, there's a focus on trying to bring people who can help with more detailed analysis. There's much less data available from the past, or much less data available that's relevant for the future, I think, so it needs to be interpreted differently. Much deeper due diligence is required when it comes to transactions and deals. If you're in that space, as long as you have strong technical skills and if you are in the strategy space, your leadership skills are being tested significantly now. If you can demonstrate that, then you should be in demand. On the supply chain side of things, all traditional supply chain roles are very busy still. There is recruitment in that space. I hope that if anyone finds himself in a bad situation in that, within that profession, then you should hopefully find some options for you. If you have skills in operational excellence, Lean Six Sigma and process improvement, you will find yourself probably in demand and hopefully in a good position. Data analysis, so data management and advanced analytics skills are in demand from a lot of clients we work with. Businesses are looking to make data-driven decisions for now and when the markets recover. So candidates that have experience in retail, customer segmentation and payment platforms are being looked at the moment. But if you don't have this experience, maybe spend some time learning and developing your technical skills. I would say, just to summarize, data governance and advanced analytics is a skill set, or are skill sets that are in demand and will stay in demand. In procurement, there's a demand for and there always was, I guess, for communication skills and analytical ability. These were actually built into any pre-COVID briefs, but now more than ever, people are looking for this. So if you find yourself with time on your hands and you're a procurement professional, I would say use your time to develop your analysis and communication skills as best as you can, and that should hold you in good stead. Finally, on marketing and communications, which is another area, I guess, where there's a number of people who have found tricky scenarios. Digital marketing principles, or the knowledge of digital marketing principles, has already grown in demand within the profession, but now organizations are looking for the most creative digital marketers that they can possibly find. There are lots of online courses on digital marketing, so if you find yourself needing additional information, then go online. There's free resources available and paid courses that you can take. On the technology side of things, information and cybersecurity has been in demand. With enhanced mobility and access means there's a greater need for security. It is as simple as that. Tech companies and consulting companies are hiring talent in this space and will be, I think, into the summer. Every business is either patting themselves on the back with a good kind of digitization journey, or they're trying to get themselves up to speed. So digital strategy and transformation professionals and consulting firms are being looked at for advice and guidance at the moment. So that profession is hopefully going to continue to do very well. And virtualization and mobility and cloud professionals are being targeted by end users and tech companies. We've even had a couple of requirements or a couple of briefs where organizations will hire these guys remotely to work for the clients here, just purely to address the skill shortage. In the legal space, what we've seen from a trend perspective, from from a skill kind of requirement, is that some organisations are showing a clear preference for lawyers with experience of e-commerce, data protection, and digital experience. And these kind of lawyers, or skills for these lawyers, will be most desirable over the rest of 2020. In HR, there's a need for people with employee engagement strategies and performance development program experience, as well as transformation and policy implementation. And finally, in the industrial side, facilities management and health and safety. I touched on it earlier on, but these are skill sets that are very, very much in demand at the moment, and probably will be for the rest of this year, depending on how this whole situation evolves. So look, thank you for that. I'm going to move on to my colleague Valentin Demand. He's going to talk you through the Africa market on a similar basis.
Thank you very much, Jan. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining our webinar. So my name is Valentin. I've been with Page Group for 2.5 years now. I'm currently the manager for the Sub-Saharan Africa region. I'm based out of South Africa, and same as Jan, I'm gonna drive you through the in-demand skills and sectors for the Africa region. So let me start first with the sectors. So we've really seen, obviously, due to the uncertain moment we are all living in and the COVID-19, few sectors being impacted more than others. And today, we really have 4 industries that are still recruiting in Africa. The first one is the healthcare industry. Obviously, we are in a global pandemic, and we are very much in need of pharmaceutical and medical devices products. In terms of the regions, we've really seen the East Africa region still recruiting quite heavily, mainly Kenya, which is today a very strong hub for both medical device and pharmaceuticals. Second, within the FMCG industry, obviously the different categories that we have within FMCG are not impacted the same way. When you see, for example, in South Africa that the spirits or tobacco products are being banned as of today, those categories within FMCG are not really heavily recruiting at the moment. Same for the cosmetics. However, everything that is related to food or first need products like diapers are still also very much recruiting in the region. Third, technology is also quite active at the moment. A little bit same situation as the Middle East in terms of internet connectivity, internet access. Those type of companies within the technology industry are still quite actively recruiting in Africa. And the fourth one would be the logistic and transport industry in terms of both shipping, freight forwarding, and that would be it. Moving on now onto the skills section, I think I'm going to talk a little bit more on that part, because we are living in unprecedented times, and we're gonna all have to adapt and to adjust to a new way of working. Today you can really see that some skills are being looked for by our clients in the region. The first one would be resilience. Obviously, companies are very much looking to recruit candidates who are today resilient. It is very hard to work in today's situation remotely, and resilience is one of the key aspects that our clients are looking for. The second one would be adaptability, and on that point I would like to give you all an example. I recently made a recruitment for head of chef. This person has worked in restaurants for all his life across the globe as a chef, and I approached him for a role as a chef with some research and development aspect within a private company. And at first he was not really looking to move because he's worked in a restaurant for all his life. And finally, beginning of March, he accepted the offer and moved to that company. And 2 weeks later, his restaurant actually shut down because of the COVID-19. So he was obviously very happy to have been adaptable, flexible, and take the risk of changing sectors. Otherwise, he would have lost his job 2 weeks after that. So I think being adaptable is really critical in today's situation. The third one that I would like to discuss is crisis management and remote management. I would add on to that remote management. Crisis management really at an executive level, senior to executive level. It is very important for leaders today to be able to manage crisis well. And those who had exposure already, I'm thinking, for example, to the 2008 financial crisis, are also very much looked for by our clients in order to manage also this COVID-19 crisis. The remote management is also super key. I'm sure most of you and a lot of you have experienced the remote working in the past few weeks, working from home, doing Skype for Business, Teams calls, WhatsApp calls. And today, I think, and we see that in the world, a lot of planes, travels are banned across Africa, and meaning that the managers who are managing teams remotely with a regional scope are not able to travel in countries at the moment. So this remote management experience is also very much key for our clients, to have leaders, managers who are able to manage a team from another country with digital tools, but still inspire them and making sure that they're able to reach their potential and their results, but remotely. So this remote management, crisis management aspect is super key in terms of the leaders that our clients are looking for. Which leads us to the fourth point, inspirational leadership. I think one of the main aspects of today's business is for companies to take care of their people, to inspire them, to be close to them. It can be very frustrating to work from home, or it can be demotivating. And there are a lot of aspects linked to the management you receive. If you're inspired by your manager on a daily basis, it will get you more and more, and I would say, results and also motivation on a daily basis. So I think inspirational leadership is clearly one of the skills that we are looking at. The fifth one is, I think, quite common, is the think out of the box skills. And it is more than ever relevant in today's world. Why that? Because we're going to have to find new ways of working, new ways of doing businesses, new ways of approaching the market, of approaching the consumers across sectors, across industries. We will have to find new ways of working. And this is why creative candidates, those who have a think out of the box personalities, are very much in demand in Africa at the moment. The last but not least is the hands-on type of personalities. An example I would like to give you has been my personal example. I'm normally based in South Africa. I came back to France during the quarantine, and I had to set up basically everything myself because my IT team is based in South Africa, and I had to set up my computer, my teams, how to manage my team from remote, and all that IT issues. I had to do it myself, and because there was nobody to support me. This is a small example, but I think if you take it to a more global level, it is really to have a hands-on personality and not just stuck to what your day-to-day job is supposed to be. You have to go above and beyond and really help even on the very small tasks to make sure that, and it's also linked to inspire your team. If you have this hands-on personality, you will be much more credible towards your teams. And I think this hands-on personality has been one of the first aspects that our clients are asking us when recruiting into Africa. Thank you very much all for listening. I'm going to pass it on now back to Andy Georgeson.
Thanks, Val. Hi, everybody. A quick introduction. My name's Andy. I'm the manager for Michael Page across the Middle East, across healthcare, life science, retail, property and construction, and consumer. After the two gentlemen gave us a quick overview of some of the markets and skills and trends that we're seeing, of course, these are all changing on sometimes a day-by-day basis. So for the next part of the webinar, we're going to focus on some of the strategies and hints and tips you can do yourself to try and help you land a job. And I'm going to be covering how to develop your virtual network. So in the modern era, it's never been easier to connect with anyone than it is right now. There are many, many platforms which give us access to friends, family members, colleagues, or even our customers. But how are we using that to our advantage? LinkedIn is predominantly regarded as the best tool for using to expand your personal private network. LinkedIn might be smaller than some other social networks, but it's still pretty huge. It has over 300 million users and is still growing daily. The goal when using LinkedIn should almost always be to generate leads and subsequently generate a sale. And in this instance, we're talking about the sale of yourself. Before we start, let's just remind ourselves that your virtual network is your personal online brand. It goes without saying, make sure that you have a professional photograph. Your online portfolio is complete. It highlights who you are, what you do, what you can do, your achievements, what you're currently looking for, and where you're currently working. And I would advise keeping any of your more informal personal social media profiles private, because job seekers and recruiters might try to find that as well. So this segment's going to specifically focus on the strategies that will help you build the most effective network possible, both in size and quality, with quality being the most important factor in our opinion. So number one, determine with who you should be trying to connect with. You really need to focus on who you want to connect with and why, whilst then staying fairly open-minded to who you accept in return. If someone's asked to connect with you personally, it might be because they feel that you could be of use to them, and in turn, of course, they or their connections could be of use to you. The more connections you have, yes, the more visible you will become to others, but the quality of the connections that you have will increase your strong virtual network, and it will have you soaring into that most viewed profile category in LinkedIn, which will make you significantly more visible and accessible to hiring managers and recruiters like ourselves. When adding to your network, you should think of some of the following themes or ideas. Number one is the easiest one. Add everybody that you already know. It could be your family and your friends, colleagues and ex-colleagues, or even some of your old university peers. And this will allow you to create your base camp in a very easy way, which will then allow you to grow the number of connections that you have. Number two, encourage people to connect with you. You can add this to your LinkedIn account in your banner or in your profile to say, I'm interested in connecting with X person or Y person for these reasons. You could make it that specific. You could even add your LinkedIn account to your email signatures on your personal accounts, or some work companies will allow you to do that yourselves. Of course, remember to check your invitations and make sure that you're accepting those as well. The third part of this is to go out and connect with people directly. This is the most important aspect. Target peers within your industry, within your sector, within your job type, and within your job type hierarchy. So if you're a finance controller, it would be advisable to join other financial controllers, sales manager to sales manager, etc. But then you want to target senior profiles above yourself. That's going to allow you to build a better network. So you might want to aim for that director or that C-suite level. Again, you can connect with HR. We would obviously advise you to connect with recruitment professionals. When connecting with HR, just think about why you're connecting with them and make sure that you're potentially adding value to them, because some HR professionals will only accept invitations of people that they might be looking or searching for, or that might be able to add value to their talent pooling in the future. Follow companies that are of interest to you as well. That could be within your area of expertise or your sector or discipline, or it could be things that you're really passionate about or interested in. This will allow you to stay up to date with industry news, and it will highlight also to you who's a key opinion leader within that field. And then, yep, that's right, you guessed it, connect with them as well. The last part of determining who you should be connecting with comes in the form of groups. This is actually quite heavily overlooked from a virtual networking point of view, and it's one of the easiest ways to find like-minded people or think tanks of things that you're interested in that could be of use to you in the future. You can search for the groups within your geographical scope, your job function type, and then join them. That might help people who are trying to move different countries. I've seen some questions already on that. And there are plenty of connections to be found, all sharing common interests to you, which can improve the quality of your connections. Of course, if you want to go one step ahead, create a group yourself and ask people to join that, and that will increase the value of your virtual network. The second element of this virtual network is to become someone people want to connect with. Having people inviting themselves into your network is the easiest, the most effective way to ensure that you're developing that virtual network. I try to dedicate, where possible, at least 1 hour to LinkedIn per day, especially if you are an active job seeker, accepting connections, sending connections of your own, and reading information being shared by people, companies, or the groups that you're following. But most importantly, do not be passive. You need to share content. You need to engage with content. It's not enough simply just sending a mass amount of connections and accepting a mass amount of connections, not doing anything with it. So that could be as simple as sharing an article that you've read that day. It could be passing similar information on. You could go one step further, which we would advise, writing your own articles, or pulse articles as they're called, which are quick one-pagers of your insights or thoughts into a current professional situation, and engage obviously with the content that you're seeing. If someone's put something up that's of interest, let them know it's of interest, engage with them, make them feel positive, and they're more likely to connect with you. Ask questions to your network and other people that you're seeing or coming across. Again, increasing your visibility, which is important, and making people want to follow or connect you. There's one warning note here, and it goes without saying that LinkedIn is not like other social media platforms such as Facebook or Twitter. So we would genuinely try to avoid anything that might be political, negative, or borderline informal. The third element of building a virtual network is possibly the most simple, but it's definitely one that everybody overlooks. How many times, myself included, and I'm sure everyone listening here, have we been to a conference, we've dished out as many business cards as we possibly can, we've collected them too, forming some conference sticker album, but then we've done absolutely nothing with them. It's the most common networking trap that we all fall into, and your virtual network is certainly no different. There's a common misconception when it comes to networking that it's only a one-step process. Meet new people, that's all you're focused on. In fact, it's really beneficial to think of the two-step process, with the second one always being forgotten. And it's number one, meet new people, and number two, build a relationship with those people. Otherwise, it's completely pointless. When sending someone a connection, you'll have a significantly higher response rate to them if you include a brief message to them. It could be as simple as, I'm keen to connect with you as we work in the same industry, or I'm keen we share a mutual connection. I know this person or that person, let's connect to discuss. It could also be through engaging their content, reading an article or a post, or hearing something about their company in the market and wanting to speak to them directly. When you are connected, you should be following up with this person, and try to do that regularly. Regularly could be once every month, it could be once every quarter, but don't let that virtual business card sit on your desk for 5 weeks and then let it disappear. If you've connected with them, there's a reason for that. So tell them why, engage with them. If they've connected with you, simply ask them how you can help. Being able to point people to your own content and the content that you're driving is obviously the best way to add value to your connections and build that relationship. So if a connection has shared something of interest, let them know about it. And if you have a new connection coming to you, point them to an article that you've shared and see what they think about it. Very simple steps, but something that everyone always overlooks, and it can be really beneficial in finding new avenues. Again, touching on that point, generating leads and making a sale of yourself. So the key takeaways: think about who you want to connect with and why. Follow up with those connections to build relationships. Share content, be visible on other people's content, and join or create groups and drive network connection. Thank you for listening. I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Denise, who's going to talk about how you can use this concept and many, many other valuable tools to stand out to recruiters and HR professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denise Sergioğlu. I am a managing consultant for the Michael Page Legal Division. I'm based out of Dubai and I cover the Middle East region. I've been recruiting in legal for the past 5 years, and this year is certainly new to me, as is for all of us. I think the reality of what is happening around us has probably just started to sink in. We now live in a world where the number of job seekers versus job roles will likely be higher than ever before. So what does this mean for us right now? It means that we'll probably have to put in more time and effort than we have before, and it means accepting that the efforts we put in today may take unusually long to translate into results. But finding your next job is not impossible. The right job for you is out there, and with a resilient approach and a good understanding of the recruitment process, you'll see that your job search isn't as scary as you thought. So in this portion, I'm going to discuss a few ways to stand out to recruiters and build a long-term relationship with them. Now, I acknowledge and agree with the fact that getting the attention of recruiters can be difficult and frustrating at times. We, as recruiters, we want to be building relationships with as many people as we can. The challenge we face is often managing the volumes that come with this job. So while you might be trying to establish a relationship with one recruiter, they are working towards establishing relationships with hundreds of candidates at any given time. So if you could not get through to them that time, it doesn't mean you're not valuable or worthy of being represented. It can just take a couple of tries and CV applications for you to reach the top of the pile. I can offer up some of my personal observations here in how I have built very good relationships with my candidates and what you could be doing to build a long-term and productive relationship with the recruiters in your network. So number one, set alerts on the recruitment agency websites. So you probably already do this on LinkedIn, but if you haven't gone onto the agency websites and set alerts there too, then you should. This is so you have access to more vacancies and you would get email alerts every time a job in your field is advertised, and then you can review the requirements and reach out to the recruiter directly as soon as it's posted. Number two, call the recruiter or hiring manager after you've applied. I appreciate this can be quite tricky right now, and generally the direct contact information of internal HR professionals and line managers are not often accessible. But if the role is advertised by an agency recruiter and you think you tick all the boxes in terms of the job requirements, give the recruiter a call and let them know you've just made an application for X job and you believe you have the applicable skills to be suitable for the role. And you never know, the recruiter may review your CV while they have you on the phone and increase your chances of getting shortlisted then and there. Number three, tailor your CV. In cases where your profile is not one size fits all, then the chances are the role you are going to apply for is probably not one size fits all vacancy. So tailoring is going to be important when making applications to these roles. When you're looking at the job requirements, the first thing you want to do is showcase the most relevant specialist skills at the top of your CV and work your way down to the more generalist work. Let's use an example. You're applying for a job where the main requirement is to have knowledge of employment policies and labor laws. You would make the first 2 or 3 bullet points under your most recent company's responsibilities about your role in advising the company on changes to the labor law, visa processes, the security clearance requirements. You could throw in some additional statements like handling employee relations, participating in disciplinary hearings, drafting and amending employment contracts, handling onboarding processes, etc. We want to include as many of these relevant words so that your CV is more likely to come up in a keyword search. On this, if a recruiter you already work with and a recruiter who already has your CV has called you about an opportunity that is considered to be more niche, ask them to give you time to tailor your CV. So you can send them a more up-to-date version. There's no harm in asking for a couple of hours to research the company and to go over the job description in detail so that you can tailor your CV. Note that I said a few hours, not a few days. If you take too long, then you might not make the shortlist. And I would advise you to be clear about how much time you will need, or you can ask the recruiter when they intend on submitting their shortlist, and then make sure you follow through with your promise. If you're looking to partner with a recruiter long term and be considered for multiple opportunities, then every commitment you follow through with will help build that trusted relationship, and they'll in turn be more committed to representing someone who demonstrates integrity and who respects their time. The fourth one is connect with the recruiter anyway. You should always have a link to a recruiter, even if you're not looking for a job right now. You should accept their LinkedIn connection requests, respond to their messages, take their calls, and you might hear about some interesting and relevant information to you. You can gain access to the recruitment insights that they have shared. You might also be able to help fellow colleagues land their dream job by recommending them. And when and if your situation changes, then you'll already have a relationship with somebody. Now, on the flip side of my previous point, don't work with too many recruiters. Now, there are a lot of recruiters out there. Some are locally based, some are overseas and recruit into the respective regions, i.e. Middle East or Africa. And many people think that spreading their bases far and wide will guarantee they find a job. What happens instead is when the job market is small, like it is right now, multiple recruiters contact you about the same opportunity. And your CV may land in the inbox of a company from multiple places. When this happens, the hiring manager is less inclined to consider your application, as it looks like you lack control of where your CV is going. And you may come across as a desperate candidate. So limit your interactions to 2 or 3 reputable recruiters, ones who cover the local market well, ones you can build a strong relationship with, who you can call up about roles, seek advice, ones who you trust enough to come to you about opportunities they think are right for you. The sixth one, never go directly to the company. So in this scenario, I refer to a company that the recruiter has disclosed to you as the hiring entity. While this can feel like a way of increasing your chances with a company, it may have an opposite effect. When candidates go outside of the process that in effect has been chosen by the company, it could not only eliminate your application, it makes our job in promoting your application harder. There's a lot of background work that goes into presenting a CV to a client, and we've received extensive training on this. We work hard to properly showcase a candidate's relevant skills, and we do this so you don't have to. I also want to stress the importance of privileged information and remind you that if a recruiter has shared information related to a client they are recruiting for with you, they have shared this information in confidence, the same way that you would share your details with them, expecting absolute discretion. So number 7, be honest, ties well in with my previous point. Any information we ask so that we can better your position. If you can't be honest with your recruiter about your current situation, your salary information, accurate dates of employment, about the type of role you want to move into, and what your motivating factors are, then we can't represent you accurately and we can't invest in your best interests. Contrary to popular belief, we are not in this for the quick wins. We do this because we want to change lives for the better, and we can't do that without complete honesty from you. My final point, break the barrier between being a candidate and being a client. Now, the benefit of working with someone you already know is there is an existing partnership to build upon. We're better likely to know what matches your personality. We know you and we may know your team better than most. And this then translates to us knowing who the candidates are that are available to you in your market, and we can target the ones at the companies that you have respect for. This should save you a great deal of time in filling a vacant position. So just because we might work with you as a candidate, it doesn't mean we don't sit on the other side of the fence. And if you are working with a reputable recruiter, you should be confident in their ability to operate ethically and on the basis of strict confidentiality. So suggesting that 360-degree partnership will elevate your recall value and presence in the recruiter's mind, which means they might think of you first when a suitable job opportunity arises. That brings me to the end of my piece. I'll now hand over to Charlotte Nolan, who will give us some insights on how to conduct an effective video interview, and I'll be available to answer any of your questions in the Q&A session. On to you, Charlotte.
Thank you so much, Denise, and good afternoon to everyone here today. So I'm Charlotte Nolan. I'm Key Account Manager for Michael Page's Saudi Arabian practice. So I focus on supporting all of the services that we provide into our public and private sector clients in Saudi. Prior to this, I was a hands-on recruiter for 9 years across the UK, Asia, and now the Middle East, where I've been for the last 3 years. So moving on to what I'm going to discuss today, as I'm sure any of you in the process of looking for a job and have maybe even hit the interview stage during the COVID period, you will understand and have experienced the fact that these are now taking more regularly than not place over a video conferencing system. So what I want to do is to help you prepare for what can seem a little bit foreign and potentially unnatural or uncomfortable, and run through what are hopefully some useful and practical tips to help you prepare for these. And in all honesty, preparation is where a lot of the hard work goes in. So this starts with whichever VC platform the client wants to use, whether that's Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Skype. You really have to take the time in advance to test this out. So whether that's a test call with a family member, friend, or your recruiter if you're working with them, just to check that the audio is working correctly, the connection is stable, your picture isn't pixelated or delayed, and this will allow you enough time to fix anything in advance and propose an alternative. I would also recommend as well to avoid using your mobile phone, as you can get disrupted by incoming calls or text or emails that can be distracting and take you away from your point. So another great kind of element to these videos, or one advantage to them, is that a lot of the platforms do have the functionality to record videos. So it's highly beneficial to do so and play back to review not only how you sound and how you're structuring your answers, but also how you look in terms of eye contact and body language and even your facial expressions. This is also something that can be done as a live practice with your recruiter if timing allows. I did do this recently for a senior candidate that we had down at final stage, and it was over VC, and we found that they were looking away from the screen a lot of the time, or down at their own camera view. But with a few practices, we were able to fix this, and as a result, they appeared much more engaged and professional throughout the video call. And then also another big point that may sound obvious, but I think because these video calls are previously used as kind of a format for us, particularly in current circumstances, keeping in touch with friends and family, they can be viewed as a little bit more of a casual engagement. However, when it comes to your interviews, they must be treated exactly as you would do a face-to-face meeting, starting with your own personal appearance. So you absolutely must dress professionally, as this will not only create a positive first impression, which takes seconds to build and seconds to shatter, it will also help you to get in that headspace. I know working from home is a weird environment for us all, various different levels of motivation, but if you get dressed up, you'll be feeling confident and in the right mood to go. And proof of this is we recently had a candidate make it to the final interview with a CEO. Prior to this, they were absolutely the front runner to being offered, hugely technically capable for the role. This was just a formality. But because he turned up wearing sports gear, he was actually removed from the process. So it just goes to show how impactful this is when done right, but even more so when it's not followed. And just as important as your own personal experience, personal appearance, do also be mindful as well of the environment around you. So make sure you have a well-lit, neutral and tidy background, and that you're in a quiet and private space without potential disruption. So again, working from home, there's other people in the house, children being homeschooled, but just make sure you're planning in advance to ensure that this won't cause any disruptions. One massive advantage of a video interview is that you can have some kind of cheat notes or some prompts in front of you to remember specific points that you would like to cover off or highlight. But just ensure that you're not referencing these too much. So I personally find it helps to have them stuck up on Post-its behind my screen. So this avoids you kind of looking away from the camera too much or down at your desk. And it also ensures, just due to the size of a Post-it, that they are kept as brief bullet points. And then finally, this is a topic I will cover off a little bit later in terms of what the benefits are. But as always, just make sure you are researching your company and your interviewers in advance. When it comes to actually how things may differ or how you may want to change things slightly during the interview, there are some key points to be mindful of to ensure you're getting the same levels of engagement and creating a strong impression. So unlike normal interviews, you're not going to have the same opportunity to shake hands with your interviewers and kind of settle into the room with some small talk that you can kind of build some engagement through. But it's important not to miss giving yourself a proper and professional introduction. It's also always a great idea to start with a simple nice to meet you and thank the person for taking the time to meet with you and speak with you on that day. You know, the further you go along in the process, or even if you've been invited for a first stage interview, the likelihood is that it's a pretty level playing field in terms of how you fare against the other competitor candidates in terms of your skill set and experience. So one way that you can also set yourself apart is by showing that you're enthusiastic about the opportunity and you're really grateful to have the time to speak with them. Equally, these are unusual times for us all. It can feel a little alien and unnatural at first. So even just acknowledging the fact that this is an unusual way of doing things to break the ice is also fine. Also, as mentioned at the start of this with your practice runs, it is very good to take into account the fact that you want to be able to be making eye contact even though you're not face to face. One way to help this is by elevating your device or setting up your device at an appropriate proximity from you, and also a level that provides you the best opportunity to look into that camera and make eye contact with your interviewers. Equally, when it comes to body language, you want to make sure that you're portraying levels of engagement by sitting up straight, avoiding crossing your arms or leaning on your elbows or fidgeting with anything on your desk. You can nod along when necessary to show that you're actively listening, lean in slightly, and of course, smile and be friendly and open and warm. It's definitely a little bit trickier over video to build that natural rapport. So again, going back to researching the company and your interviewers, this is a great opportunity to try and find some points of common ground or some talking subjects. So for example, I recently had a candidate on LinkedIn or saw that their interviewer on LinkedIn had gone to the same university as them. So I was able to use this as a little icebreaker and strike up a more informal exchange that can be harder to build over a video conference, as they can tend to feel a little bit straight down to business. Equally, to show that you're listening to everything that your interviewer says and you're interested in what they're saying, be sure to ask related questions or provide relevant examples, repeat back some of the phraseology that they're using, because that really shows how much you're listening and interested in what they have to say. And whilst there is a balance, and it's really important to kind of read your interviewer and their tone and their personality, it's always good to try and inject some personality rather than just being a question answer format. So don't be afraid, where appropriate, to show your sense of humour and make references to your personal interests and kind of anything that you might have in common. And this is also a really important one in terms of avoiding negativity. I think it's very easy with kind of the influx of news that we're getting every day, and possibly even your personal situation. It's vital to avoid discussing this too much in the interview. You can raise it in the capacity of trying to understand how it may have affected their organisation, and what they're doing to potentially address it, but just ensure that that's included as part of some other meaningful questions. And then finally, in terms of being concise with your answers, there can be a tendency, without the normal formalities and structure of entering a room and being aware of other people having other meetings, you don't want to ramble too much with your answers. So here, having those bullet points in front of you is a great point to keep yourself on track. It's also really good practice to have some pre-prepared examples of your key points, your achievements, projects and highlights, and practice giving an overview of exactly what the situation was, the actions that you put in place, and what was the outcome, to ensure you're able to deliver those in a succinct way, and that you have a good catalogue of examples to do. And then finally, just coming up to the follow-up after your interview. So with things currently changing on a daily basis, it can be a little tricky to know when to follow up. But in all honesty, all the usual rules apply. At the end of the interview, inquire about what the timelines are, when they want to hire this person and have them on board. That's something to be mindful of moving forward. It's always great if contact details have been shared with you to send a follow-up email to say thank you. You can share examples of your work that have possibly been discussed as part of the interview. And then when you're working with a recruiter, this is when there is a massive advantage to working with us. We speak to our clients on a daily, every other day basis. So we can kind of push things on your behalf and potentially be a little bit more direct than if you're speaking with them yourself. And then finally, probably most importantly, whether you're successful or not, always take the opportunity to ask for feedback, particularly if video interviews are new to you. This is a vital opportunity to have some takeaways, some things to work on, so that every time you're getting that little bit better and comfortable. They are a great practice opportunity. So we have loads of this information online already. I will be circulating something around LinkedIn after this, and please feel free to share with anyone else you know you're looking for a job. We'll now move on to the Q&A section. So anything that has come up throughout this, Ian will now be putting the kind of most popular questions to us.
Thank you very much, Charlotte, and thank you to all of my colleagues there. I hope everyone will agree that there's lots of value and information to be taken from what we've heard. So there's a lot of questions, a massive amount of questions, which I'm very grateful that everyone's taken some time to ask. I'm going to try and summarize these into key questions for everyone. Firstly, back to you, Charlotte. A couple of people have asked around, should they use a professional CV writing company, and should they tailor their CV for each role they're applying for?
Yep, absolutely. So when it comes to using these CV writing companies, there obviously are advantages and disadvantages. There's a lot of information and topics online about how best to structure your CV. I think that the most important thing in this is if you do get a recruiter, and a great recruiter like Denise was speaking about, in terms of working with one that knows you really well, they can be hugely helpful in actually giving you some feedback on your CV at the beginning and the end of the process to work on. When it comes to tailoring it, it's all about matching your CV to what the job description is. So when you're seeing the job description online, whether that's on a job board or via your recruiter, you've obviously got to look at kind of what the keywords are in there and what specific skill sets that you're looking at. It also takes something like 7 seconds for a recruiter, whether it's us as an agency or an internal recruiter, to actually decide whether we're going to move forward with that or not. So you want to make sure that the most relevant information is at the top of your CV. So whether that's that you worked on a specific project and at the moment it's bullet point number 10 of 20, moving it up to the top and making sure that it's really clear. It's always really important as well to not only say what you did, but how you did it as well. So whether that's using specific technologies, specific methodologies, but it's just about matching it to what that opportunity is specifically looking for and bringing out that keywords and key experience at the top of your CV to grab people's attention.
Thanks a lot, Charlotte. We've had a couple of different questions regarding visas in certain countries, around salaries being slightly reduced during COVID-19 and salary guides. So Denise, what's your thoughts on clients offering lower salaries during COVID-19? Do we have a salary guide, and what's the current situation with visas and being out of work, etc.?
Sure, thank you. So on the salary question, in our region in the Middle East, we have not noticed a significant reduction in salaries. At most, you'll see the level of the role recruited on being converted to a more junior one. So they're open to receiving candidates that have less years of experience, or a company will try to draw 2 special skills out of one person. And this is why upskilling yourself will be so valuable during this time if you have some extra time on your hands. And yes, we do have a 2020 salary survey. This is available on both of our websites for the Middle East and Africa. The link to the websites will be shared with you on the final slide. On the question of visas, I assume this is particular to the UAE, and if that is the case, we actually hosted a webinar early April on this, where Michael Page partnered with a DWF law firm, with the employment lawyers there, and they shared all the recent changes to visas during the COVID-19 pandemic. What I'll do is I'll share the link to the recording of that webinar in the chat screen now.
Thank you very much, Denise. So in fact, a lot of people ask, not just now, but we often get asked this a lot: how easy is it to move from one sector to another? You will probably hear different answers to this, but I'd like to hear, Andy, what's your opinion on this?
Thanks, Ian. It's a great question, and it's something that we do get asked every single day. It really does depend on the client. On the hiring manager or company, and sometimes the sector itself. We find it really frustrating. So we share candidates' frustrations sometimes when a client is being very, very specific to just one sector, because we might have 4 or 5 people that are absolutely perfect, but they don't have oil and gas, or they don't have e-commerce, or they don't have luxury retail. It really does depend on that hiring company. Sometimes there are genuine reasons for it. So it might be that they want to hire a skill set, but they also want to hire the network or the knowledge obtained within that certain sector. Most job adverts or most recruiters will highlight if a sector requirement or skill set is essential. And if it is, then obviously there's a reason for that. So it really is case by case, unfortunately, quite a frustrating answer, but it definitely is possible. You just need to make sure that the skill sets that you have are matching in some way. So moving from an oil and gas company to luxury retail might be a little bit far-fetched in some disciplines. So you just have to be cautious with what sector you're moving into. And then, as we've discussed on our answers here, tailor your CV to highlight how the skills that you've learned from one sector can be transferred to another. That could be really beneficial.
Thank you very much, Andy. We also have a question about moving to different countries. There's actually quite a few questions, again, related to moving from one country to another. I did touch on this early on in the webinar when I said that a lot of clients I've been speaking with personally have been a little bit reluctant to hear about candidates based overseas. We haven't got a crystal ball. We can't tell you when that will change. But I'd like to maybe just hear the opinion from Valentine about this. Well, what's your kind of impression, or what's your opinion when it comes to candidates looking to move from one country to another?
Thanks, Ian. And look, I'm aligned with you. I have myself personally, I'm French, and I worked in Chile and in South Africa, so I looked for jobs abroad. I think previous to COVID, it was I would not say easy, but it was manageable to find a job in another country. But most of the clients I have spoken with in the past few weeks are really looking for local candidates already based in country, either a local national or an expatriate with a work permit. Because obviously from an administrative point of view, some countries are still under quarantine and lockdown, and the administration is simply not working. So it's very hard to get visas or work permits. So I think, when is it going to start again? I don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, as you said, but I think as of today, it is quite complex, and you really have one tip I would give you is really make your research on how to potentially join another country and work in another country. But right now, it is our clients are more looking for candidates already based in countries. That's how I would answer.
Thanks, Val. Appreciate that. Ian, there's been several questions about how recruiters and how HR professionals screen candidates, especially because of the large volume. So can you just give some insights in terms of how that process happens?
Yes, thanks, Andy. So I just want to give you one quick stat. I want to provide this to everyone. So on average, Michael Page in the Middle East specifically receives 647 applications for every role we advertise. I'm not saying that's the same everywhere around the world. It's probably a little bit more enhanced here for various reasons, but you will see that recruiters tend to receive a lot of CVs. We obviously can't respond to everyone. I'm sure people can appreciate and understand that. I know it's frustrating if you're applying for jobs. Often people contact me and say they're applying for a job they're absolutely perfect for, and they're not receiving a response. Before you really assess or really want to claim that you're perfect for a role, the best thing to do is really look at the role, the advertisement, look at the key criteria. The criteria is agreed with the client we're working with. It's actually dictated to us by the client often, and would usually be focused on the industry that someone's coming from. It will be focused on the length of experience or the length of relevant experience that someone has within a role or within a profession. It may be the types of roles specifically that they've held. It may be even the types of companies they've worked in before. And often it may even be about language skills. A client will often say to us, I need an Arabic speaker or a native English speaker, or lots of other, French speaking roles, Mandarin speaking roles. These roles come up. And when they do, we have to abide by what the client has asked us for. The client obviously gives us strict requirements, and our job is to find people that match those requirements. So your CV will be assessed based on the key criteria that the client's provided. If we're doing our jobs right, the key criteria will be listed on the advertisement of the role. If you don't meet all of those requirements, I would probably suggest that maybe you're not relevant and you shouldn't expect to receive a response. I can only apologise that you don't get a response, but as I say, we have a very, very significant amount of people that we need to help and to try and respond to, often ones that are more relevant than others. So I think that concludes the Q&A section of the webinar. There may be other questions. There probably will be other questions. If you have a look at the screen now, you'll notice that there are lots of resources available to help you, our candidate community, for Michael Page, and this can be found on our website. There's information there to help you with structuring and approaching your job search. If you look at the career advice section of our website, you'll find information on tips and advice on how to write a cover letter and how to write a CV. We even have a CV writing test, a fitness test that you can take part in, which will give you the opportunity to assess your CV itself against some best practice. Just very quickly answer one other question that I didn't kind of respond to is just the size of CVs. I've seen a few people ask how big a CV should be. My opinion is always 2 to 3 pages, depending on the amount of experience you've got. If you want to stand out, then you make sure that your CV is as targeted to a role as possible often, but make sure that it's true and it's relevant and it's accurate. There's other information on our website there. There's also a part of our website where we'll have the names and the contact information of the relevant consultants per discipline or per practice. If you find a job on our website, it will have the name of the consultant who's advertising that role, and it will have their contact information. You can, of course, contact that person. I can't promise that person's going to be able to help you, depending on kind of what their workload is like and how relevant you are to the roles they're advertising. But I promise you that we all want to be able to help everyone here. And I hope that this webinar has given some insight, some information, which will help you approach your job search in a slightly different way. But for now, we'll part ways. I hope that I get the opportunity to speak to people, and I hope that people's fortunes, if they're bad at the moment, improve, and if they're already good, then continue to improve, of course. And I wish you all a very good day and a very good weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.